Hey YouTube, today we're going to discuss the benefits of isolation movements. Since this is a bodybuilding channel, even though I do a ton of compounds, I of course have to talk about isolation movements because for bodybuilding and to build a good physique, they are essential. So if you've seen the title of the video, you know what we're going to talk about. In my opinion, the issue with compound movements is that they take away from the lifter the ability to tell exactly what muscle is going to be worked. And there are multiple reasons for that. One, because they activate so many muscles at once that leverages and proportions start messing with muscle activation. There are certain people that are going to fill their chest a ton on the bench press. There are other people who are going to only fill triceps. There are people who are going to fill only front delt. And of course, the ratio of muscle activation is rather similar between individuals, meaning that there is no one that's going to have more activation of the lateral head of the tricep on a bench as in regard to their chest, but it can be a difference that is significant enough that it's going to impact your ability to make gains. Another thing too is form even minimal distinctions or differences in form between individuals or even within the same individual movement patterns can result in difference in muscle activations. And that ties into the reason number 3, because we tend to move heavy weight with compound movements, we tend to push the reps at a high intensity. You're going to be so focused on the strength aspect that you're not going to be refilling the muscles work. For me, a prime example of that is the squat. When I squat, I don't feel my quads. And yet I got to 26 inches legs doing basically only squats, with my quads being my best body part. I never get quad pumps, I never get a connection to the quad. Does it mean that the mind muscle connection is useless, the pumps are useless? No. It just means that a muscle that works and is put under load is going to grow. But if you're not particularly gifted with a certain muscle, if it's a muscle that's stubborn, you might need to establish that relationship with the muscle so that you can feel it and activate it better. If a muscle grows without you even feeling it being activated, then fine. But if it doesn't, it might be time to try and create that connection. And I think that a lot of people fall into that trap where they do only compounds. The rest of certain muscles or the rest of the body besides the main muscles that are activated by the compounds doesn't really grow, but they're so used to that mentality and pattern of movements that they just keep at it. And they tell themselves that the reason why the muscles are not going to grow is because they have bad genetics. And for the most part, it's not true. I was the same. I was doing only compounds. I ran a powerlifting program for a year and a half that was basically compound movements and variations. That's all I did. And certain body parts got very big, but others didn't move an inch. I will make a video about it, specifically on the topic, where I will show you a picture of my back. When I reached my first 500-pound deadlift, I had no lats, like none at all. And yet, a lot of people will tell you that the deadlift is supposed to grow the lats. So what did I think at the time? I thought, oh, it's because I have bad lat genetics. It's just the way it is. It's not that I am not good enough at growing them. It's not that I didn't find what works for them. It's just that they won't grow. And I believed that until I started experimenting with certain movements that I felt in my lats, and surprise, surprise, they're growing. So that's the thing people who are stuck with this mentality of minimalism also need to hear. It's not just about biceps and triceps. It's not just the show muscles. You have other muscles that are important for strength that are not going to be developed enough by compound movements, and you need to isolate them. So for me, for example, what worked the best for my lats is pullovers and pull-ups. Those two, done with very slow tempo, very low weight, grew my lats a ton more than heavy deadlifts and heavy rows. And this is the beauty of isolation. It really allows you to know what you're working. And it doesn't mean you have to discard compound movements. That's also a fallacy that people who like to move heavy weights with compounds are going to throw at you if you try to sell isolation movements to them. They'll tell you do fluff and pump or something like this. The truth is, you should be doing both. You should be doing your strength work with compound movements. You should be doing compound movement variations, which are still great for hypertrophy, and I love doing them, and isolation movements for the parts of your body that require them. And I will be making videos about it because it's important when it comes to programming, but you should be using the gifts that you were given to gain time so that you have more time for isolation. For example, if you're like me and your quads grow from squats and squats only, great, now you have a way to save time. Because your quads are not going to require any additional work, you can invest that time to build up and to bring up your weak parts using isolation. For me, the parts of my body that need isolation are my triceps, my lats, my traps, and the rear delts also, and certain parts of my forearms. All of these I will not just ignore and hope they grow with compound movements, because the issue with that mentality too, that I will be expressing more in other videos, is you cannot tell someone that they'll have a good back if they just get to a 700-pound deadlift. That's not realistic. You can get good forearms with much lighter weight and more realistic goals with direct forearm isolation. You don't need to become elite at the deadlift to have big forearms, especially because a lot of people who actually reach those numbers still have small forearms. I made a video about it. Having a good deadlift is not going to guarantee big forearms. So that's what you need to keep in mind with isolation. You need to disregard the dogma and elitist mentality of the people who refuse to do them and actually try it for yourself. And that's the reason why in every single one of my programs, even for novices, I put isolation movements, because for me, it's something you need to be familiar with, because the earlier you start, the better your physique is going to look in the long run. Thank you for watching this video. Have a good day.